welcome back to my channel, the Southern Lutheran Witness. And for today's video, we actually have a very special guest that I've been wanting to interview, and we just got around to it. His name is Jats, and he's a former Mormon, now a Christian, and not only that, a Lutheran Christian. And I'm hoping that this video will be the launching point for more interviews in the future. Um, just learning stories and hearing testimonies from fellow Lutherans and learning a lot from them. In this video, I learned a lot, and I'm hoping that you will find this just as much interesting and maybe even learn more than I did. In the background, you see some Blood on the Danube DLC for the game Easy Red 2 gameplay. So I hope that's entertaining for you as well. I actually really much enjoy this game, but I probably enjoy the interview even more. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Don't forget to consider liking and subscribing. It helps this channel a lot, and look forward to making more content like this, and maybe even talking with our friend Jats here in the future. So God bless, and hope you guys enjoy. All right, so we are now live.
Perfect.
So yes, I have Jats with me. Is it short for Jatson?
Jackson, yep.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, we just you're going to be our first interview here on the channel. So I guess we just get right into it just with introductions. So you are a former Mormon who became a Lutheran. Um,
Yes.
so I guess we just kind of go just tell us about yourself. Um, quick rundown.
Yeah. Uh yeah, cool. So yeah, I originally grew up in Orem, Utah, which is about 10 minutes away from BYU. So I was kind of an interesting spot to grow up in. I'm one of four siblings, and today I am happily married. I've been Lutheran for about 4 years now, so it's been quite the journey. So yeah, I've got
Okay.
and then now I've got a kid on the way too. So
Congratulations.
yeah,
Do you come from like a very like big Mormon family, like
um,
generational Mormon family, or is it?
yeah. Actually, yeah. So on my mom's side, they were some of the early pioneers that kind of founded Utah. And then on my dad's side, it's pretty much the similar story. So yeah, long generations of LDS in my family, and yeah, and lots of cousins, lots of family. You know, most of them are still in the church. So
Okay, wow. So
yeah,
would you consider your family like a very like pious like Mormon family, like very
um,
like really into it, or like a mixed bag, or?
yeah, it's pretty much a mixed bag. I've got some aunts that aren't active. But a lot of my cousins, especially on my dad's side, you know, that they've all served missions and they're pretty into the church. My grandparents are the same way. So, yeah, I would say it's pretty much a mixed bag, but you're either, it seems like they're either LDS, and then the ones that aren't LDS aren't, you know, they're not really sure what they believe. So it's
Okay.
kind of, there's a big mix. So, and then I've had a couple cousins too convert to Lutheranism with me, so
Okay, that's awesome.
that's been cool as well. So
Hmm. Um, if you were to ask your cousins sort of like their story of coming to Lutheranism, would it be very similar to yours, or would it be different in some ways?
yeah, I would think that it would be pretty similar to how I was feeling growing up. Yeah, definitely. I One of my cousins that I've been really close with, I think we were kind of struggling with the same questions. So it would make sense that yeah, that we'd be pretty similar with that.
Okay. Awesome. Um, so growing up Mormon, would you have considered yourself like a really like serious Mormon, or were you sort of just raised that way?
Yeah, I was pretty into it. Got the priesthood when I was, let's see, I think I was 16, 15 or 16. Was active. My dad made me go to church every single Sunday, so I would say I was pretty devoted, and I was pretty convinced that it was, the true church. Um, but yeah, it was. I mean, it was pretty good growing up. I would say that it was a pretty tight knit community. There was a ton of stuff to do. I was really involved with scouts as well. Um, so yeah, I was pretty convinced at the time that it was the way to go. So, but then you also don't have a lot of people around you that are different and that you hear different
Right.
things from. So yeah, it's how you're raised and it's the environment that you're raised in, and that's kind of where I was brought up, and um, I'd say I was pretty convinced.
Okay. So yeah, that like fascinates me. Just
Yeah.
just to like well like that it's like a whole nother just like world, I guess. Like would you say that there are many Mormons that don't really understand what makes them different from other Christian? Well, obviously they're not. It's not. They're not Christian, but I would imagine like a lot of Mormons don't really see themselves. I guess the way of putting it. So like they would argue that they're Christian, but we would say that they're not because they don't have the proper understanding of who Jesus is, the Trinity, etc. But I'm kind of
Yeah.
like curious. So like, what is like a Mormon view of other Christian groups? If that makes sense.
Um, yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say that um, I would say that they would think that like a Lutheran, for example, or other Christians would have some truth, but they don't have the full truth.
Okay.
And the fullness of the gospel and the fullness of the truth is in the LDS church. I would say we'd have some truth, but we don't have all of it.
And I'm guessing that truth that we're missing from their point of view is revealed in the Book of Mormon. Um,
Yeah, mostly, yeah. So like that would be the other testament. That's the fullness of the truth, which would be in the Book of Mormon, and then temple ordinances and things of that nature.
okay. Interesting. So
Yeah.
how is the Mormon Church set up? My experience with talking with a few Mormons, they have like modern day like apostles and prophets,
Yes.
and so do they believe that like I guess like the church polity, or I guess you could say like a magisterium or whatever, can obtain like new revelation? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. They believe that there's always new revelation, which is kind of funny because it's also like this one guy gets all the revelation, but then the lay people, it's like, you know, it's kind of odd. Like, um, it seems like the lay people should get revelation too, right? Like it shouldn't just be
Right.
one person, but that's kind of how they see it. And then it's kind of laid out that you have the prophet, and then you have the quorum of the 12, the 12 apostles, right?
Okay.
And they believe that the 12 should have continued from the days of Christ, up into the modern day. Um, so there should always be a quorum of the 12, and then they have kind of a assembly of like the quorum of the 70 and stuff like that. And then you have bishops. So it's kind of a big there's a lot of different hierarchies in the church.
Okay, so it goes from like prophet, and then your 12 apostles, and I'm guessing like your pastors or priests underneath that.
Yeah, there's it's kind of interesting because you have a bishop that is over like a ward, and then the ward is just, that's all of your members, and then you have like a bishop's assistant, and then you kind of have teachers and stuff like that underneath. So you're basically called to like a new role essentially.
Okay.
So you could be like the teacher of primary school, you could be the teacher of, the young men's. It just kind of depends. Like I think my dad's been the young men's leader and stuff like that, and has been like a teacher. So you just kind of get these callings, and then you're also like called to be bishops. And so but it's a little confusing on how that all plays
Yeah,
out. I
sounds
don't really know.
sounds like it. How do they
Yeah.
choose? How do they choose like a prophet? Like to me, as this is like a crazy idea to me. Like how do you go
Yeah.
about choosing who? It's just like, hey, I got this vision that I was going to be a prophet, so I'm going to choose
Yeah.
a prophet.
Yeah. So you always have the 12, and then the prophet who, like, let's say the current prophet passed away, it would be the next person would be the oldest of the 12 apostles. So it's
Okay.
it's kind of by age almost.
It would
Um
it would be interesting to have a Mormon on the show, and then have a like a like apostolic church member or
yeah,
minister.
yeah.
I would love to just see them just talk, and because
Yeah.
whenever you're talking about the like modern day apostles, I think of like the modern day apostolic church movement, or I believe New Apostolic Reformation. I think of that
Right.
almost. So
Yeah.
theoretically, the Mormon Church could have a second Book of Mormon, could they? Since they believe in
Yeah.
ongoing revelation.
Yeah, it's like, why not? I guess you could, come up with they could come up with another book, if they got revelation for it. I don't know. Um but yeah, I mean, there have been things in the church's history that have changed. There's been changing revelation. Things like polygamy. I know that's kind of that's not something they practice anymore, but they did get revelation that it was wrong. Um,
Doctrinal development.
yeah, yeah. There's like African Americans receiving the priesthood. There was that wasn't allowed until the 70s, and then that was changed too. So there's kind of a constant revelation change.
Okay.
um and and for better or for worse, the church is much better than it was a long time ago. So it is changing for the better.
Yeah, I
But
remember. I remember watching some some ex Mormons, now Christians, talk about
yeah,
how if you look at the Mormon LDS's website from 2013, it's a lot different with what it says now. But you're able to still find what it used to say historically on like on archives, on
right,
how they viewed black people and polygamy and all that kind of stuff. And a lot
yeah,
of Mormons are like in denial, but we're like, if you look at your website from decades ago in this archive, it's still there.
yeah,
So I've always found that kind of funny. Is
that,
now
yeah,
is Mormonism like a monolith worldwide? Because I would imagine they have missions in other countries and everything.
yes.
Can it vary like wildly depending on what geographic location that you're in?
um you know i I think that it does sort of vary. I haven't been to too many LDS churches outside of Utah. I have been to some out of state, and I would say it is pretty consistent. But I also haven't been to any outside of the country. So it's hard for me say. But I would say that it would be it probably is pretty consistent no matter where you go.
Okay.
As far as like, the sacrament meeting and everything like that. But yeah, I would say that compared to the ones I've been to, it seems like it's always pretty much the same thing.
Okay. That's a lot of interesting information there.
Yeah.
So kind of go back where we were a little bit ago. So
Yeah.
you're growing up Mormon. Your dad's obviously um, very devout. Go to Mormon temple every Sunday. He's you believe, hey, this is the one true church. Um, I guess.
Right. We have the
Uh,
fullness of the gospel,
right.
right?
Um, well, and then plus another revelation, which I think is kind of interesting, kind of funny. But how old were you at the time? And was your dad like in part of the clergy or like high up there, or was he also
Yeah.
just a normal just Mormon guy?
Yeah, he was he always had a calling. It was usually over the young men's, so like scout camp and like activities for the younger guys, probably like, 16 through 18. He was always kind of in charge of them, and then they have something called elders quorum. And he was a teacher in the elders quorum as well. And those are kind of, the older guys, people that have gotten back from their missions. So yeah, he was always pretty involved and always had a role to play. And then my mother, she was in the Relief Society, did a lot in the Relief Society too, which is kind of like the women's group. And then I grew up, and I was a teacher. I did some stuff too. I had the priesthood growing up, and so yeah, it was he was very devout. It was always you got to go to Sunday school. You got to go every Sunday, and then you got to be involved as well. So that involved scouting and stuff like that too. But it was always fun for me. I always enjoyed going to church. Hang out with friends, and there's a lot to do. They make it fun.
Yeah.
So I always
So
enjoyed it.
you said that you were going into like the priesthood. Is that how is that defined in the Mormon church? Is it different from, let's say, your Lutherans and your Roman
Yeah.
Catholics and everything? Is it different?
Yes. This kind of goes back to Peter, James, and John, right? Like they believe that the original priesthood on earth had been lost, and that there wasn't really a living priesthood until Joseph Smith got the keys from Peter, James, and John. So Peter, James, and John actually, according to Joseph Smith, visit him and give him the restored keys of the priesthood.
Okay,
And
so
now
he's y'all's Peter.
yes. So yeah, exactly. So that succession from Joseph and a few other people is the true priesthood, right? And all the other priesthoods are lost.
Okay.
And that is given to you as a, I believe I was. It's hard to say now because I forget a lot of these details, but I want to say I was around 16 years old when I got it. So yeah, and then with that you can, bless the sacraments. So I was actually blessing the sacraments as a young man. So
Oh wow.
yeah. So I would get up there, I'd give my prayer, I'd bless the sacraments, and then it would be distributed, or I would be one of the ones distributing it. So it's kind of interesting, and it's funny because that's what I don't bless it, but I distribute the communion at the Lutheran church now. So
Yeah.
it's almost like going back in time. So
So I know what from past conversations we've had, they view um, the bread and wine as purely symbolic.
Yes.
Now, as you're growing up in the Mormon Church and you're going into their priesthood, do they have their equivalent of like a seminary or anything like that to train incoming priests, or is it really just kind of learn as you
Um,
go, kind of?
it's pretty much learn as you go. There's not really a seminary. I mean, like I went to seminary as a kid, but like you don't have to be college, you don't have to be a college educated person to take
Gotcha.
on a leadership role, that might be preferred, but I don't really know how they do it. But yeah, like growing up in high school, we have a separate seminary building. So like I think ninth through 12th grade, I that was one of my classes was LDS seminary. So did that almost every other day, and then I had church on Sunday. So it was a lot of education and stuff like that.
So, what was it like just culturally? Was there, you talk about how your mom and dad and you were very involved. Uh,
Yes.
how many siblings do you have? How many siblings do you have?
I have three other siblings. So I've got a little sister. She's about 8 years old, and then I have two older siblings as well.
Okay, already are they still Mormon, or did some of them convert to?
Um, yeah. So my two older siblings, they're not particularly religious. They ended up um, leaving the church probably around like 17 or 18, the time that they can kind of make their own decisions. And then, yeah, they don't really believe. I don't think. I think they're more agnostic. And then my little sister actually just recently got baptized into the LDS faith. So,
What do they believe about baptism?
yeah, so baptism is usually done at 8 years old. They believe that when you're eight, that's kind of the age of accountability or the age that you could be, I guess, aware of your sins. Um, so yeah, 8 years old is usually when they do that, and I don't know how they really gauge that or where that belief came from, but I remember when I was 8 years old, like I feel like I knew what sin was before that.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting, but
Yeah, you don't need to teach a kid about sin. We're just born with it. You don't have to teach a
yeah,
kid how to steal an apple or how to steal a candy bar from the
I
kitchen.
yeah, I feel like even before 8 years old, I mean I knew that was wrong.
Yeah. So I hate to. I always get sidetracked because I have so many questions
Yeah,
away from the main question. So, what's like their theology of? Because the way he kind of described it almost sounds like a little touch of like Baptist view of baptism. But do they believe that it has any sort of like regeneration? Do they say it with the
yes,
Okay, they do. Oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. But at the same
yeah,
time, they have this age of accountability. That's
right,
interesting.
yeah. So they believe that baptism, that it cleanses it's a regeneration. It cleanses you. They also believe that that's when you receive the gift of the Holy Spirit as well.
Okay.
Um, and what that entails, it's still a little confusing to me. Um, do you? I feel like you always sort of have the Holy Spirit in your life. It's just whether or not you choose to accept it. So I don't think that the Holy Spirit is necessarily something that you just get at one point. I think
Yeah.
that it's constantly working in your life. um
Well,
so that's kind of an
I think it's
interesting
interesting.
difference.
I don't remember the. I'm again sidetracked again, but I don't remember on the exact verse. I should know, But before prior to baptism, the gift of the Holy Spirit, we have the law written upon our hearts, but of course, due to our own human nature, it's corrupted. But
Right.
I was talking with a friend, and that's probably why you see across all cultures, you like most people say, "Hey, murder's wrong. Don't be a jerk." So I mean that's the law written upon our hearts. We all naturally have a conscience, but it's corrupted, and it could be more corrupted or a little less corrupted. But we are still essentially in Ephesians 2:11, is it, or 2:7, that we are
Yeah.
spiritually dead. We might can do some good works, but it's not pleasing to God because we're spiritually dead. So we can do civil good things, but not spiritually good things until we are regenerated by baptism. But yeah, what you just mentioned there kind of reminded me of that a little bit, and I believe also it. Man, I didn't write down. I'm not good
Yeah.
at memorizing exact scriptures, but
Right. Yeah.
you
That's
baptized for a good conscience.
right.
So that baptism sort of washes away the sin of our conscience that we already had, but it's no longer it's no longer dominated by sin. We're no longer under the dominion of sin. We still have the old Adam. We still have original sin, but
Right.
we are reborn. Um, we have a new spiritual being. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's different, right? Like in LDS, like in the LDS church, you're baptized, right? And then after baptism, you get what's called like the laying on of hands,
right,
and that's usually somebody that has the Melchizedek priesthood. So there's Aaronic when you're younger, and then Melchizedek, I believe, around the time that you go on your mission. So there's two types of priesthood. Um, so yeah, like uh, when you receive confirmation, you're receiving the Holy Ghost through the laying on of hands. And then after that, they believe that the Holy Spirit is, is kind of like a constant companion in your life. But I don't see why that wouldn't happen before you were 8 years old. So that's also kind of something that's a little confusing.
it
So,
almost kind of sounds like you hear a lot of like Pentecostals kind of talk this way about your second baptism. Um,
right.
I can see some parallels there. Now, I guess a good question would be, since they don't have a proper understanding of the Trinity and ultimately are not worshiping the same God, at least on paper. I pray that some Mormons might still be saved in spite of their church's teaching. They just don't
Yeah.
have a proper understanding what the church teaches. But would that make their baptisms possibly invalid? Because do they say the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? But even if
They
they
do. They
do,
do.
but
Yeah.
they mean something different by it. So
See that's kind of the issue is that there's a lot of the same language um that like normal Christians would speak, but it means different things, right?
right,
So that's what's hard about it. Like when I would technically my Lutheran baptism, what I was told by my pastor is this is your first baptism. This is the first baptism you've had. The other baptisms didn't count, your other baptisms. So I think that Christians do take that seriously, and they wouldn't count it as a real baptism. So
yeah, that's
that was
that's that's very fascinating. Uh,
yeah.
so kind of just circling back. So you grew up in a very very serious Mormon family. Your mom and dad and you. How is it culturally within like the laity and just everyday life as a Mormon? I think a lot of people kind of get the impression that like whenever you meet like a Mormon missionary, they're very very clean cut. Um,
Yes.
uh, a lot of times, pretty.
Right.
Dressed very very nice. Um, and sometimes you kind of get the impression like, man, they must be, because I believe in past conversations Do you grow up very like pressured into hey, you got to present yourself in a very perfect way, you have to volunteer for this or that, or you're not a serious Mormon? Is there a lot of pressure growing up in that kind of environment, or?
Of course, yeah. There's definitely a lot of pressure. I would say, modesty is always that's always hit pretty hard. Like you should always look presentable. You should try and live a life that's virtuous, which isn't a bad thing.
Right. Just
But I think,
just for the viewers to know, I'm not against modesty or dressing
yes,
nice. I love
okay,
my suits. I always wear a suit to
right.
church.
They
But
they look nice. Like I like dressing up for church. That's always something that I've appreciated from my LDS upbringing is looking presentable in the house of God. Um, and I think that it's a good thing.
right,
Um, but there is this kind of stigma of like, how good are you?
right,
Are you doing enough? And that's always something that I've felt maybe a little bit guilty of. I think when I was growing up LDS is like, um, I wasn't hitting the same standards,
right,
and I always kind of felt like I wasn't proving myself enough to God, right? And it could have just been little sins, but it was always this guilt, am I really saved? That was kind of the stigma. The other thing they kind of push is like, you got to go on your mission. Um, you've got to hit these marks, and I wasn't hitting them. I kind of came from a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was young, and just always kind of felt this guilt, this internal guilt, like I'm not perfect. Um, and I think
all fall short.
perfection.
Glory to God.
Yep, and that's the thing. Like it's very much a kind of a works-based system.
Right,
Like and it's kind of changed a little bit, but at least when I was growing up, it was like, are you going to the temple? Like, and in order to go to the temple, you've got to, you can't drink coffee, you can't, like, there's certain things that you cannot do before you enter the temple. And like it's manageable, right? But
mm-hmm.
it's also like, am am I trying to prove myself to God
Right,
instead of admitting that I'm a sinner and believing and living a better life that way, instead of, what is the list of things I need to do in order to be redeemed? you know um and that was kind of why I was interested in Lutheranism, is that's a big thing. um we're not we're salvation is a gift, right? And we're not trying to earn it, but through salvation we do good works, right?
right,
So I think in the LDS view, it's a lot of, you know I don't want to say like pride or arrogance, but it is a lot of like, trying to show people that you're doing everything right.
yeah,
It's very much that sort of lifestyle in Utah. Sort of keeping up with the Joneses. Like, am I living good enough? It's like people have to prove that. Where in Christianity and Protestantism more generally, like, I don't feel like I have to do that.
wow.
I think,
So, what is their soteriology? How they view salvation? Do they believe that the certain things you do, like different works, or not doing stuff like not drinking coffee, like you increase in your like you increase your salvation, or how do they view that, or is there,
yeah,
or is there sort of like not really a well defined soteriology for them?
yeah. So the way it kind of works is they have, so after you die, there's basically three tiers of heaven. So the highest tier, you have celestial glory, and then there's a middle tier, which is terrestrial, and then the lowest tier is telestial. So basically, they believe that if you do a lot of good works, if you are meeting the criteria to go into the temple and to do the ordinances, that you will attain the highest level of heaven. But like, let's say you were kind of, not you were still LDS, but you weren't, hitting all the marks. You'd probably go to a middle kingdom. And then, let's say you didn't believe it at all. Or if you were a Christian, right? You would go to the lowest kingdom. So it's a tier-based system where if you're hitting all the marks, you're doing the right things, that you would go to the highest kingdom with your family, and you'd be with your family forever.
Huh.
Um,
So I guess culturally in practice, does it almost become like a caste system among Mormons? Like people like I guess in a sense sort of like say, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to the highest level, and then you guys are going to the middle one, and you guys have the lowest one. Is it kind of
no,
become sort of that culturally, or
no, I wouldn't say so. No, I
okay?
think that everybody kind of tries to do their best, and they can have hope, that they reach the highest level of heaven. But it's also like, you know, nobody's saying, "Oh, you're probably going to go to a lower kingdom."
You're right. Okay.
Like that's just not something that exists.
Which
I
one do
think
you get
everybody.
your own planet?
That's the celestial glory. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So in the celestial kingdom, you'll be with your family. You'll be sealed to your wife. Right. And then they believe in sort of an exaltation. It's kind of like it's like theosis in Eastern Orthodox and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Have you ever looked into that? It's sort of like that, um, but they believe that you can literally become a creator, right? You're not just like growing as a spirit or as a person. You're literally becoming a god, right? And that your wife would be your goddess, and through like you can produce your own spirit children. You can have your own planet. That was always kind of something that I heard growing up from my parents. That's not really talked a lot about now, but it was always something that was there, and that was doctrine.
So
Um,
have they tried to have they like slowly been like softening it a little bit? Uh,
yeah, it's kind of there's kind of a new sort of facelift going on now, where a lot of these more controversial views aren't being talked about, but they also still exist as doctrine. So it's kind of interesting. It's like trying to fit in with everybody, but then not talking about what they actually believe. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
um,
talking with some Mormon missionaries in real life, I got a little bit of that impression. Like, if you start asking them about their views of the Trinity, they kind of blow it off. It's like, well, it's just different, just interpretation. I'm like, well, it's a little more than just different interpretation here.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
no,
interesting.
yeah. So kind of growing up, I always kind of struggled with that, particularly because when I was younger, we would read the Book of Mormon. We'd finish the Book of Mormon, and then we would reread it. So we were always reading the Book of Mormon, but we never read the Bible, which is
Okay.
like, we have these books. The Bible is one of our, one of the books that we read, that we're supposed to read. It's still scripture, but we never read it. which was always kind of odd to me.
Is that sort
Um,
of more of a like something like in practice and culturally where maybe perhaps the Book of Mormon is seen as like higher than the Bible, or is that like something that's like in doctrine?
no, they're seen on the same level.
Okay.
But the Bible, and this is hard because they say that they believe the Bible as far as it's translated correctly.
Okay.
But then how do what's not translated correctly and what is translated correctly? So it's kind of like it's a confusing thing where it's like, yeah, we believe in it, but it might not be translated in the way, in the correct manner.
Right.
Um,
It almost kind of I don't know if I could even be. I don't even think there's ever a heretical version of me out there that would even be Mormon because like that just sounds like just a moving target.
yeah,
Like like your church's doctrine is like the like scripture can you can only understand in so far as the Book of Mormon can give that to you, but also their how they view like how there could be like new revelation. So what
yeah,
solid foundation do you have as a Mormon when God just seems like, well, you can't really understand the Bible for yourself, so you need the Book of Mormon, but also that could be added on to because we have ongoing revelations. Cause so it kind of just seems like a rat race a
yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a little confusing. Because then, yeah, it's interesting because when I was growing up, and going to seminary, I think around 10th or 11th grade, we started really diving into the Bible, and I was hearing things about God, that were, um, that He was eternal, like uh, things that kind of contradicted what I was believing about God. Um, and I ended up, I so this would have been the end of 11th grade. I ended up taking a trip out to France. So I lived in France for a few months in this really small town. Wasn't a whole lot to do, and one day I just figured, why don't I'll read the New Testament, because we were learning a little bit about it in seminary, and I was always curious. So I ended up, doing some serious study out there. Read the New Testament. Um, Changed a lot of my perspective on things. And then I actually came back home, took a class on European history. And that's kind of when I learned about the Reformation and Martin Luther and, how the Bible is, the sole authority on, matters of doctrine. And that's kind of when my whole perspective changed. It was like, now I get the Trinity. I think that was a big eureka moment for me.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So the LDS view, I guess, of God would be that they do believe in a sense of the Trinity where there's the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but they believe that the Father is a literal being, like with flesh and bone. Um, and that he's actually married too. Um, Joseph Smith said that he was a man that lived on another planet, and that through exaltation he achieved the status of godhood, which was in stark contrast to what even Isaiah 43:10. That I'm that I am one God. There's no other God beside me. Right, like John 1:1, where it says that Jesus is the Word, that He created everything in existence. And I saw that as problematic because if He created everything in existence, then there would only be one of Him, right? Uh, so the Trinity, I guess, really made sense in my mind. That there's these three beings, that share this one essence, and that one essence is God, right?
Right.
Not not a trillion beings that are, expressed that way, that, the father has a father, and it goes back tons of generations, and there's a lot of gods, right? It just, it's so different than the Christian perspective,
That kind
so I
of
think
goes into
that's,
my that kind of goes into my other question: is like what made you
yeah,
consider uh, not no longer being Mormon or looking into Christianity. But before we kind of get into that,
yeah,
so when it comes to stuff about the Trinity, and it comes about stuff like soteriology, their view, um, with a lot of their doctrine, would they? So it kind of sounds like they kind of lean a bit more towards the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith more so than the Bible. So if you were to like
right.
discuss this with the Mormon, would they kind of lean more towards supporting their claims about the, let's say, stuff like the Trinity, like their version of soteriology, but also different tiers of heaven? Does that primarily come from the Book of Mormon and New Revelation, or is it a mixture of both? Or
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of both. Um, and it really, I would say a lot of it hinges on the first vision account. Because when Joseph Smith says that the Father and the Son appeared to him, he was looking at two different beings, and the Father did have, flesh and bone. So I think they hinge a lot of it on the claims of Joseph, right?
right,
Um, and the other thing, Joseph Smith says in a sermon that, that we've imagined and supposed that God was God for all eternity, and I'll refute that idea.
right,
So God, it like out of Joseph Smith's mouth, God wasn't God from all eternity. Um, so it's really confusing, because I think a lot of LDS people don't believe that. I think a lot of them believe that there's always been a God. But then you have other LDS people, that have a different belief about it, and they believe that there's a lot of gods, So
right.
it's kind of, it's it's hard, because I just don't think a lot of people maybe have a grasp on it.
Right.
But then it's also right there in the core doctrines,
Yeah, because
Um,
you couldn't you could not come to those conclusions if you're just relying on scripture alone. It needs that foreign revelation that you would say like in the Book of Mormon or Joseph Smith.
yeah.
You can't read the Old New Testament and come to those doctrines. So
Well, what's crazy is that when you read the Book of Mormon, it, like, none of this stuff is mentioned. In fact, the Book of Mormon just seems like it it really, there's not a lot wrong with it, honestly. Like, if you read it, you're like, wow, this really seems like another testament of Jesus.
right,
Because none of this stuff is mentioned. The stuff that comes later is new revelation from Joseph or other prophets, So when you read the Book of Mormon, you wouldn't come to the conclusion that the Trinity is not true, right?
you're right.
Like, there's nothing in it that would open your eyes and be like, hey, that's really heretical, It's just a lot of different stories. And it honestly isn't a bad book to read. Like I'll be honest there. Like, I've read it, and it's fine. Like, I mean, I get bored reading, but like, I wouldn't find anything in there that's specifically against Christian doctrine. There might be some stuff on works, a little bit, but as far as who God is, I don't see any of that in there.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess kind of leads us into uh, what you kind of already touched on it, but like what made you consider, hey, maybe this whole Mormon thing isn't right, and kind of led you down this Christian path.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was finally actually opening the Bible and reading it. That was a big thing. And a lot of that stemmed from conversations that I'd have with my grandpa, because my grandpa, he would say, well, the Trinity doesn't make sense because, like, was God schizophrenic? It's one God acting as three different beings. But I mean, me and you would say that would be modalism, right?
Right.
It's modalism, Patrick. Yeah. um, so I think that yeah, that was something that always confused me, because I was like, do Christians really believe that there's one God acting as three different people? Um, so I beat that horse. I was like, I've gotta learn everything there is to know about what Christians have historically believed about the Trinity. And so when I started learning about it, and I learned that there's three separate beings and one essence, and that essence is, all knowing, eternal, always existing, that they share that, but they're three separate beings. I was like, this makes sense. Um,
Right.
we know who God is. Like, he's the Almighty, right? And they share that Almighty. Um, and that just made sense. And I think that a lot of LDS people don't have a clear grasp on what the Trinity actually is. And I think if they did, they would come to believe it. And that's kind of where I go with it, is that, we're talking about the nature of God, and you don't actually believe what Christians believe, or you don't believe that Christians know what the Trinity is, So, or they go the modalism path. A lot of them do that, and we don't believe that. So,
Right.
so that was kind of my big thing, was proving that trying to prove that the Trinity was true. And 2,000 years of Christian teaching, like, to say that was all wrong, I couldn't bring myself to believe that. So so that was kind of where I went with it. And I ended up in Lutheranism, and everything's going really good. So
Praise glory to God.
yeah.
Yep. One essence, three persons.
Yes.
So I'm curious, did you go straight to Lutheranism, or did you kind of dabble in other denominations, other churches first, or?
Yeah. I went. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the LCMC.
Yeah, I am familiar with it.
Yeah. So I went to one of those churches for about a year. Um, it was pretty contemporary, and I was kind of going through a stage in my life where I was like, maybe if the LDS church isn't true, it's, maybe none of it is, which is a really bad place to be. But I actually kind of fell out of belief for a while. And it took, some changes happening in my life to really get back into the faith. And, that was notably some deaths that had occurred in my family, and some things that have happened that kind of brought me back into the faith. And so yeah, I've been confessional Lutheran for about 5 years now. And I don't want to walk down that path of unbelief again, because it's
Right.
kind of a scary place to be. So so I'm
Well,
glad I'm
that's
at where I'm
amazing.
at.
That's
Yeah.
truly amazing.
Yeah, and
Man.
that's kind of a big problem with a lot of LDS people, is they leave, and then they they kind of think that none of it is true,
Right.
um, which is bad. But that's about how, like, 90% of it, 90% of them are.
Yeah.
So and I experienced it, and it wasn't fun, and I'm happy to be where I'm at now. So
It's kind of interesting because you see a little bit of parallels whenever some people, uh, leave the Roman Catholic Church, leave Orthodox Church, or
Yeah.
especially, or also evangelicalism. A lot of like popular atheists were former evangelicals or Roman Catholics or something, and it's typically when Christians leave those churches, they just leave Christianity altogether because they're sort of like raised thinking this is the church. Anything outside of it is non-Christian. So if they
Right.
leave that church, they're no longer Christian. So it's interesting
Yeah.
to see those parallels.
Well, you kind of learn that, 2000 years, Christianity had it all wrong. And then you try, you go from one church that believes that they're the one true church and you leave and it's like, maybe all of it's wrong. Which isn't a good place to land out. And I think that's kind of how my siblings were, my two older siblings, but they kind of continued with it,
Right.
I was a little different because I feel like when I didn't believe, I was accepting things that I knew in my conscience wasn't right. And that's kind of ultimately what brought me back into it. So
Going to that first Lutheran church, did you sort of just went to the nearest church that was near you, or?
yeah, I actually worked with somebody. I was a maintenance tech for a little while at a mall, and there was a security guy there that was Missouri Synod, and he didn't like the idea of closed communion, so he went to the LCMC, and he told me about it, and so I went with him one Sunday, and then turned into a couple Sundays, but I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth because I wanted to be baptized, but they didn't really see that as a priority in that church, which put me off
Strange
a
for a
little bit.
Lutheran, which is kind of strange for a
Yeah,
Lutheran church. We're all about baptism.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, they said it wasn't really a big issue,
Huh.
and it wasn't a prior. It seemed like it wasn't a priority for them. So I was like, okay, that's a little odd. And that's kind of when I fell into unbelief for a little bit. And then when I came back, I found an ELS church that was about 30 minutes away, and started going to that one. Ended up really liking the pastor. He was generally interested in me, and asked me a whole bunch of questions, and ended up getting confirmed pretty quickly. So yeah, it was really good. And then we have a new pastor now, and he's been great as well. So really like where I ended up.
So I'm guessing around this time, you really are as you're going through the confirmation going through the whole confirmation process. What were some things that you were saying? Yep, I am meant to be a Lutheran. This is awesome. Was there any other like churches that you were kind of looking up online or anything, or is you were pretty much saying, "Yep, I'm going to be a Lutheran," and kind of sort of like what were those things that kind of like confirmed that hey, I can really see myself being in this church tradition, and I'm committed to it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the one of the big things that I was considering was the Lord's Supper. That was actually a big one for me because everybody kind of has their different views of the importance, and whether it's symbolic and whether it's not. But I feel like the Lutheran view of the Lord's Supper is just like that was really big for me, because it's just like it is what it is. We don't have to go into detail about how that happens. It is the body and blood of Christ, and I feel like that was kind of the big thing that was like, okay, this makes sense because it's biblical.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I really liked about the Lutheran Church is that it's not about yourself. It's there's not some like hidden decree like Calvinists. Like, am I hoping for salvation? like because God's already predetermined it, you know.
Right.
Um, it's not like the Baptists that say, you know, this is a personal experience, so you're supposed to have this personal experience and personal conversion. Um, you know, you're looking to yourself and not necessarily to something outside of you. You know, you're only looking to your personal experiences. It's not like the Roman Catholics where they say, you know, you can have hope for salvation. But the Lutheran view is like, I can look to Christ, you know, and that was big for me. You know, it's not our own experiences; it's what Christ has done for us, and I feel like that was the biggest thing for me is that every Sunday I'm hearing, you know, the word Christ crucified, you know, I think that was the big moment for me that was just like, okay, Lutheranism has it, you know, because
Right.
I'm looking to I'm looking to Christ. I'm not looking at me. I'm looking at something outside of me, you know. Um,
It's something that is objective.
yeah, exactly. It's not about me. It's about him, you know. And I think that was the big thing. And the law gospel distinction was another thing that I really liked. And um, yeah, I just feel like it had the answer, you know.
Are you familiar with the pastor? I'm every time they're sort of like a Lutheran dynasty at this point. Are you familiar with Pastor Mark Preuss?
I don't think so.
Are you familiar? Are you familiar with like the Preusses in the LCMS?
No, I'm I'm so new to it too that some of the names I mean like I'm familiar with like Wolf Mueller and all those
Right.
people, but I'm the Preußes I have to say no.
His dad, no, his grandfather was involved with like cinemats on the good side. He was
Oh,
part of
nice. Okay.
he's part of like debating on all the liberals out there, and like their family goes far back into Lutheran history in America, and they have like tons of kids, and a lot of their sons are pastors, and you can find some of their lecture videos online. Now, I believe Mark Preuss and his dad Ruth Preuss were on the Line podcast, and in one episode, Mark Preuss is ranting about hymnody, and he's saying basically, you know, why the TLH is better, and
Yeah.
he was talking about the song "Come a Fountain, Every Blessing," that song.
Yeah.
He was saying how you think it's catchy, but it's actually terrible theology because it says, "Take this heart now, take and seal it." And he's basically he was commenting about the Calvinist view of soteriology. Whenever
Right.
where do you point the sorrowful sinner? You don't point them to his or her heart. You point them to the cross. You point them to the sacraments. Um,
Yeah.
and whenever you're kind of talking about different views of salvation, particularly the Calvinists, I just think of that video. And when they're all from the Midwest, so he's very like blunt in the way that he
Right.
explains stuff. But it's a really good episode. That kind of reminded me of like certain
Yeah.
like hymnody that we sing can affect how we think of our salvation and different doctrine.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like the Lutheran view is like that. You know, you're not pointing to your heart. You're not wondering, am I saved or not? Has God elected me? You're looking at the cross. You know, you're
Right.
looking to Christ, and that's not something you do. It's what Christ has done for you, right? Um, so that's something that I've really considered, and that's kind of how I fell into Lutheranism.
So
And
so
now my heart is at peace. You know, I can be at peace
right.
now. So
Amen to that. So
yeah,
where you're at, is are those typically the main demographics? I know we kind of talked before this video. The main demographics being Mormons. You have like some Lutherans, and you have some Roman Catholics. Is that typically like the main denomination? The two main denomination, and of course you have the Mormons.
What's funny is I actually found out that there's only about 3,000 Lutherans in Utah.
Oh, okay.
Which is which is very small compared to the rest of the states. Yeah, I would say the two main groups are Catholics and LDS. You obviously have like your non-denominationals and stuff like that, which are growing pretty rapidly out here. But as far as Protestant denominational Christianity, there's not a lot of it.
Right.
Or it doesn't have a big influence in Utah. But yeah, that's kind of the general consensus, I would say.
So like, what are like the reactions you got from friends and family when they, and not only when you said, "Hey, I'm looking into Christianity," but also particularly becoming a Lutheran?
Yeah, that was interesting because like my dad and I, we still have a lot of conversations about it, and I still have a lot of conversations with my mom, and I think they really get where I'm coming from now. Maybe they didn't see it at the time, but I feel like now they can. They know where my heart is. But I think when I first kind of started questioning things and considered leaving, it's a big deal. If you really cherish something and your kids aren't following it, it can feel a little heartbreaking, I think.
Right.
And that's kind of how they were. But now I think they get it, which is good. They're a lot less worried about me. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
So I think they're more concerned about some of my other siblings, and but I don't feel like I really had a bad reaction. It was like, oh, that's disappointing, but we get it now. Friends. I don't think there was much difference there. People took it pretty well, and yeah, I love Mormons. I think they're great. Like most of my friends are LDS, and they're very respectable people for the most part. So I think making that jump, it wasn't really an issue for anybody.
Right. And I think in real life, in practice, I think your story, I guess, God has made you sort of like a bridge, to save souls.
Yeah.
To work through you and people like you to save souls.
Right.
And it kind of be that familiar face, and you say, "Hey, I was Mormon. I get it, and this is what led me to becoming a Christian." So I'm guessing from their point of view, it's good to see your face because you've been there, done that. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and what's also nice too is that I've gotten some of my family into it, which is great. And to have them sort of wrestle with these ideas, and my cousin is Lutheran now, and his wife is Lutheran, and I hope that trend kind of continues, whether it's Lutheran or some other Christian denomination.
Right.
I'm not really picky about it, but I just want to. My biggest thing is clearing up misconceptions, because I think there's a lot of that on both sides. Christians have a lot of misconceptions about LDS people, and LDS people have a lot of misconceptions about Christians.
Right.
And I'm trying to have that conversation with people that this is what we actually believe, and it's nice to hear the same thing from them too. So,
and he also mentioned that there are a lot of converts at your church, correct?
Yeah, I'd say about half the congregation are adult converts, adult baptisms. So
Are they around
that
your
have come out
age,
of this
or
church.
are they around your
Um,
age, or older, or younger?
in the because we have a Wisconsin Synod church that's not too far away from my church. There's a lot of younger people there. But at my church, it tends to be sort of a mixed bag. I'd say most people are over probably 30, like late 30s, 40s, and then you have some elderly people. So there's probably two other people around my age, but not very many.
Right.
And then my cousin is my age too, and his wife. Um, so there is more younger people that are starting to attend and become members, but I would say most of it is older people.
Right. And when you say that those demographics of converts who are probably like a little over 30 to like 40 something, are they typically families?
Uh, yeah. We actually just got a new family recently that has been going. And then there's been a few that have just been like singles. That we have one guy that's single that got confirmed recently, and some other people as well. But yeah, they've kind of been older.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar demographic at my church, albeit much more heavy on the elderly side. But we
Yeah,
still kind of have a good, strong group of like middle aged, like early 30s people. We just recently, for whatever reason, just had a baby boom. There's a bunch of little kids, but
that's
growing up,
great.
growing up non-denominational, and visiting other different churches, I think most churches have the same demographic, just varying. So it's either
Yeah,
it's always either extremely old or extremely young. There's very little in between. So like most mainline churches are going to be mostly elderly. You may or may not have a stronger, a pretty good strong middle age, but all those middle aged people are families. There's going to be
right.
barely anyone who's in their teens or in their 20s. It's either very old and very young, like toddlers, but they're only there because of
Right.
their parents. So most churches I've seen have a very similar demographic, and it's almost hardly any like young single Christians in churches.
Yeah, definitely. There's that Wisconsin Synod Church that's not far from mine that we're in communion with. They have an element or like a elementary school attached.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty big one too. So you have a lot of younger families that are at that church.
That's interesting. You
Um,
mentioned that you're in communion with them. Is that a local church in communion, or is it um or is your
yeah,
or is your denomination actually like in communion with Wells?
yeah, we're in communion with Wells. We're one of the smaller Lutheran denominations. It's kind of like how the AALC is in communion with the LCMS. Like
Gotcha.
even though they're smaller denomination, it's pretty much like that. We're just a smaller denomination in communion with Wells. But
Okay, yeah, I
we
did
were
not
one
know
of
that.
yeah, and we were one of the historic uh, Lutheran denominations that was in the oh, what was it called before LCMS and Wells split up? I can't remember. Um, and yet, like I want to say it's like General Synod or something, but um, yeah, we used to be like one of the original denominations with Wells, LCMS, and we were all in communion before the whole breakup happened.
Right.
So, but yeah, we were. I think the Norwegian Synod is what we were originally called.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I find Lutheran history in America particularly fascinating, and not to kind of get all
yeah,
sidetracked, but
yeah,
it's always like these different autonomous groups that sort of developed on their own because of like different immigrant groups who have
yeah,
merged or separated, um, but it's not schism because they didn't break away. It was just we're going to be in communion with you. We're not going to be in communion with you. And I can't help
Yeah,
but kind of notice. I think it's part of just God's work, maybe that slowly but surely the Lutherans have kind of like emerged closer together. Because I feel like a Lutheran back then will probably say, "Wow, we're in a better state today than we were in 1800." There were a bunch of
right.
just Lutherans just scattered around, but now we're kind of. I mean, as a new
I really,
Lutheran, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no, yeah. I was just saying, like, I really hope that there's, unity between our denominations someday. Now, it's like I feel like we have so much in common, and
Right.
there's just these little things I think that we need to get out of the way. But
And maybe that being a very slow historic process might also have its benefits because when there is unity, that means there's true doctrinal unity and not just political
right,
unity. So it's very
definitely.
fascinating, but I guess we'll just see. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's cool too because my church actually, I think this was pretty recently. I want to say like maybe 6 years ago. The LCMS church that's pretty local to me was under construction, and they were letting the LCMS teach at our church, which is really neat. So like they would have their own separate service, I think, just at an earlier time, but in the same building, which was really awesome.
and a
So
lot of Lutherans don't know this, but I believe by the end of the 1800s, Lutherans made up the fourth largest Christian group in America.
yeah,
I feel like we don't give ourselves really enough credit that yeah, we don't have as much of a significant impact on this country's history, but it's there. It's there since the Revolution,
yep.
especially during the 1800s. It was very strong, and we today we are actually, despite the decline, larger than the Episcopalians.
Right.
But I don't know. I kind of feel like whenever I watch Lutheran content, it's almost as if some Lutherans just think we just showed up just recently. I'm like, no, there's actually a lot of history. And we were, I
Yeah,
mean, we're actually one of the largest groups of Christians in America. Um,
pretty much encompasses the Midwest too. A lot of
right.
Midwest history is Lutheran history. So
Um, Sadly, we're not as strong here in the South, but there's still really cool Lutheran history down here, especially in the Carolinas. Um, there's some really fascinating Lutheran history over there. In Huntsville, Alabama, um, there's a church, I believe it's Redeemer, that started because of the German scientists came over after the war. Not after,
oh,
actually, no, pre-war, because they were helping with the Manhattan Project.
oh,
Same thing
cool.
in El Paso, Texas. I went to a church and the stained glass was donated by families who worked on the Manhattan Project. And the church that I
Oh,
go
neat.
to, not to dox myself, my church I go to is the first Lutheran congregation in Alabama. So we are the oldest. Um, we are the oldest congregation in Alabama. So
That's
it's
awesome.
fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it'd be nice to be part of something that historic. That'd be really neat.
So
Yeah,
we talked about like your reaction from your friends and family. Unless you wanted to add something to that.
no, no. I think that's basically it. I mean, I generally had pretty positive reactions.
What
It was
about
only really the time that I was kind of going through the non-belief. I think that I got more negative reaction,
gotcha?
but
What
but that's
about
understandable.
were there any reactions from the Mormon Church at itself, like from elders or anything?
Um, no, the only thing was, they were emailing me or like sending me emails and trying to figure out where I was living at the time. But I don't know if that had anything to do with me not being active. Maybe it did, but I think they just generally like to know where you are so that they can invite you to church and stuff like that. But
They
I
didn't
didn't really
ring a
have.
they didn't ring a big old bell and say, hear
No,
ye, Jackson
no,
is
there's
therefore accursed."
no. I think that the ex. I feel like a lot of ex Mormons are, they say they have like these really horrible, horror stories and stuff like that. But I didn't never got any of that. So, um,
That's probably
I
just
feel like,
part of God's plan, because
yeah,
if it was very nasty, like some ex Mormon stories are, unfortunately are, it would be a lot harder kind of to be that bridge in between Christian
yeah,
and Mormon. If you had such a terrible experience, it's hard to kind of be that face, that being that bridge to Mormons. That,
right.
hey, come check out the Christian side. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Like I mean, I still keep in contact with a lot of them, and I honestly don't think that the LDS church in general is as bad as a lot of people say it is. Um and that's surprising to hear from somebody that left, but like I really respect a lot of LDS people, and um I want to make sure that there aren't misconceptions on either side,
Man, I
which
just
is
lost views,
nice.
man. Come on. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I
Well,
like I love Mormons. I respect them, but I mean, I do think that there's some bad, there's some bad theology, and um, I'm just trying to help people kind of understand. I think that's where I come from. And my pastor, he's really big into LDS history. I think he went to school for that for a long
right.
time and owns all these books. And he's kind of the same way, where, we take more of a less extreme approach. And I feel like that brings in more members and more discipleship than being really negative and nasty to them,
Right.
because a lot of them just don't, they just haven't been catechized well, I think
Right.
that's the
Well,
biggest problem.
I would even think that makes actually raises the stakes more, because then it's not as easy to bring people to Christianity. Because I mean, I would imagine this kind of goes for any church or any religion that you get attached to the to certain communities, and uh, your experience might not be all that bad, but that makes it harder to leave. And I think, I mean, like, if the ODS by and large was, how oftentimes it is described as you say, then it would just be easy to have people say, yeah, come on over to the Christian side. But it, because like you said, there are good people there, and despite the bad theology, there are some good communities. I'm
Yeah,
actually yeah, it makes it harder. It actually makes it almost like a little bit more dangerous for the Mormon side, because it makes it harder to leave. So I
yeah,
think we shouldn't just take that and say, oh, you're being too soft on them. I'm sure someone might think that, but I actually would say no. This means that we need to encourage more people like you to be that bridge even more, because
yeah.
it just raises the stakes. It raises the importance of doing what you're doing. So
There's a guy on YouTube. He's a Calvinist guy, but it's called Apologia Studios. I don't know if you've ever heard of that YouTube channel.
I might have
Um,
come across this content before.
yeah, you probably have, but I mean, I I agree with some of his approaches, but other stuff I tend to disagree with a little bit as far as how he approaches LDS people. Um, but he says, like, you got to treat these people with love and respect and kindness, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to bridge the gap.
Right.
Is being nice to these people, and that you see a lot of really bad taste stuff on social media of, like, just dogging Mormons, and being unkind, but that's not the way to do it. And if anything, it pushes people further away from the actual truth. So
Right. It's like sort of like that saying from Teddy Roosevelt: "Speak softly, but carry a big stick." Not like to beat someone
yeah,
with, but a
yeah,
good, but big theology stick, I guess you could say. Because
right,
ultimately, like Mormons, they fully believe, yeah, we are Christians. And of course, we would say no, you're not. But you just sometimes you just can't just go straight up, just say no, you're not. You're not Christian. I'm going to debate you,
yeah,
bro. I'm going to like debate you, bro, because like they legitimately believe that, and of course you kind so you kind of need to you kind of you like you said, like treat them with love and respect and just explain
yeah,
your position, because if you kind of just go full out just swinging, then again it kind of
yeah. You're not
it
gonna.
hardens the heart, and then it just pushes people away.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, you gotta go issue by issue, and just say, like, who is, like, start with God. That's the biggest thing, right? That's why Christianity and everything is there, is like the who is God, and like how do we understand who He is. So, like, I think
Right.
that's the best way to start,
Yeah, I was
and
talking
just
with
kind of
the
build off that.
I was talking with the LCMS chaplain, and he was talking with a soldier who was trans. I promise this will relate. Um, and you've heard the saying, you got to meet where people are at. And
Yeah,
this chaplain was sort of saying, but you can't take that too far, because ultimately you have to stand for truth and just say how things are. And this LCMS chaplain, he was very respectful, very loving towards the soldier, but he just said straight up, "What you're doing is wrong." And that
right.
soldier was saying, "I've never been told that before. I've always been reinforced for what I am and what I'm doing, but I've never ever been told that I was wrong." And I feel like
Yeah,
you need to approach it with that. You need to approach it with love and understanding, but at the same time, stand firm and saying you're wrong.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so it's always kind of striking that balance. So yeah, that's very interesting. I know we're kind of going over an hour at this point,
Yeah,
but
yeah, definitely.
but
No,
I
it's
love
so
kind
good.
of. I'm sure whoever views this video would hope they find it entertaining. Hope they haven't already
Yeah,
clicked off and say you guys talk too much.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a lot to talk about. So, I mean, there's so much that goes into it, which is, I mean, it's crazy. So,
Was there
um,
any like hurdles at all going in becoming a Christian, or and coming to the Lutheran Church? Any like cultural kind of adjustments that you had to adjust to? Anything like you found shocking or surprising that were different in the Lutheran Church, uh,
um,
despite your
y-
coming from a Mormon background?
yeah. I mean, I don't really see that. I think the biggest thing was, like, maybe the closed communion part aspect of it. I think that was, because I didn't know that about Lutherans. I mean, other Protestants are pretty loose with communion, and, like, everybody can take it, sort of thing.
Which is interesting, because I don't know if you watch Young Anglican. I talked to him quite a bit um, on Instagram, and he like that used to be a lot of the other Protestants churches' stances. Like the Anglicans talk about how, oh yeah, we're open to communion and closed communion is wrong, but I'm like,
Yeah,
the Anglicans used to have our position, and I believe Young Anglican, he's in favor of closed communion. So I think it's kind of interesting how that's like a
yeah,
debated subject today, but like that was just the norm back then. I don't know so much about the Presbyterians, but I know the Anglicans were for closed communion too.
yeah, and I think that came with, learning about more of, like, what communion is and what we're actually doing and what we're actually taking. And now, like, I don't see any other way. Like, closed communion is the way to go. Like,
Do Mormons
I
not
feel like if
do Mormons not practice closed communion?
It's pretty loose, and I think that's more of just like their view of it, that
Right.
it's more symbolic, like, oh yeah, like it's okay for anybody to take it, that's kind of how they see it. And my wife, she still kind of is, she thinks that the closed communion thing is a little different still, and there's still some things that she hasn't fully accepted too, which is okay. It's a process, there's things that are different, and but yeah, I think that was the big one for me. And the other thing that I kind of saw as a hurdle was just how, um, I guess, fractured the Lutheran Church is. Like,
Right.
there's all these denominations, and it seems like, we're expressing the same things, as far as like Wells and LCMS goes. Um, like, I feel like some of the issues are so small, that we should just be, it's going to take some time to be in full communion, I think. But that was one thing that was kind of hard for me, because I'm like, well, what if I want to go to an LCMS church, and there's no Wells churches around me, and I have to go to an LCMS one. Like, I can't take communion, it's a little strange. I think that was a little strange for me at first, but now I
Right.
get it,
Mm-hmm.
um, we should, I think that when that time comes, it'll be good. But for the time being, it can be a little bit of a negative just to like go to a new place, and the only thing around is an LCMS church, so, and I can't take communion there, and it can be a little disheartening, I think, sometimes, especially when I travel a lot.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think that those two are the only really big things for me. But communion isn't so much of an issue now. I actually agree with the closed communion position. So
Right. Did you already meet your wife whenever you were Mormon, or did you meet her after you became Christian?
yeah, I met her kind of when I was questioning. Actually, I mean, we've been together for almost 10 years now, so
Wow.
it's been a long time. But um, when she had a lot of questions that she would ask me, and I was LDS at the time. I remember trying to answer questions from an LDS perspective. Um, and then I think that also kind of um, changed my point of view on things too. Because when somebody was asking me questions, I was like, questioning what my responses. So that was another thing. But yeah, I was definitely LDS when we first met, and
Okay.
then not long after I had started questioning things.
Did she give you like any pushback on questions that she was giving you, and that kind of made you kind of look more into things? And did she kind of like indirectly like help you into researching more into the Bible and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, the way that I would answer questions, or if I didn't have a question, or if I didn't have an answer to something, I would look into it and try to give her the best response. But then that also makes you critically think, like,
Right.
like maybe I should question this a little bit, So I think that did indirectly help with the process.
Awesome. Well,
But
we love to see Lutheran couples, Lutheran matzing. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna baptize our infant. He's gonna be um, coming in the next few weeks, and probably sort of the beginning of September is kind of when we're setting that date for the baptism. And so yeah, I mean, she's open to everything that I'm trying to do. So
that's awesome.
so that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, she just
we
hasn't hit that point of like, do I actually want to convert? I think she's still trying to figure things out, which is okay.
Well, we definitely need you and me both know that we need more younger people in the LCMS. So it's awesome to see. How old are you?
Yeah. I'm 20. I'm turned 27 in September, and she's 27. So,
Okay, so yeah, I'm 26. We're around the same age, so it's
oh,
good.
nice.
It's
That's
good to
awesome.
see. It's good to see that happen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
And
no,
it's
you're
especially
go ahead.
oh, so, it's especially good too that that I have some cousins that are involved too. Um, so it's good. I hope to get more people into it. So,
Whenever you go to whenever you went to your church or other Lutheran churches, do they find like your background very like interesting? Whenever you first came, it's like, oh, you're you're a Mormon convert. That's fascinating. Tell me more. Is it normally like a point of interest or?
oh yeah, definitely a point of interest. Almost every Lutheran church that I've been to, they see a new face and they want to talk to you, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And Utah, and it's like, oh, and that's where the conversation usually goes.
You're right.
Because they think of Utah, they think of LDS, and yeah, you kind of become popular pretty quick once you talk about it. so
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of fun, but yeah, it's usually people are really interested in your story and kind of how you got into Lutheranism and stuff. So and I hope that trend continues for people. It seems like Orthodoxy has seen a big increase. Catholicism, a lot of Catholic converts in Utah. So, there is hope. There's a lot of people becoming Christian after being LDS, which is nice to see. No matter what it is, as long as it's Trinitarian and they're believing the essentials, I think it's a good thing. So
Right. And, I see a lot of Lutherans, um, or maybe just Protestants in general, just being maybe a little bit self-conscious about, why aren't we seeing, you know, massive amounts of new converts to our churches or anything? Well, even then, I would say that's really more of an internet thing. In terms of real life and in actual stats, it's not as dramatic as people think.
yeah,
So definitely, it's not what it actually appears, but I get the sentiment. But
yeah,
I think now I've kind of been at peace with like, you know what, it might be to our benefit that maybe the Lutheran Church kind of it's kind of like a bit slower to react to this, and uh, we're definitely gaining more converts, but it's definitely at a slower rate at the moment. But maybe that might be to our benefit because that means that much very very serious Christians are who are converting or coming into the Lutheran Church. So it might be to our benefit. So
yeah. When I go to the Wells Church in Taylorsville, I mean, that's all I really need to see to be like, wow, this is. I mean, there are a lot of members, and I go to my church, like we're getting new converts like monthly. So there are people attending. There aren't a lot of people leaving in Utah, which is really good to see. So even if it's just like one or two, it's every couple months. It's a good thing to see that people are attending. So and then even the LCMS church out here, we have like tons of families, younger people. It's a big movement out here, and I think it's going to continue to grow. So
here, I'm trying to find this on the line episode. Yeah, now of course he's referring to the LCMS, but I'm sure it would apply to your Lutheran denomination as well. It's with Heath Curtis. He watched that one. He talks about the demographics um, of the LCMS.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Well, yeah, he's kind of going into how yes, there's decline, but there's also a lot of hope that he had like three different like stats people work independently Um, and they did some research for him. He kind of like compiled it. And he's saying that like in terms of like larger families, you had Mormons, Church of Christ, and LCMS Lutherans, um,
Oh, that's good.
which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
And then no, despite no modern day Lutherans, we have our issues, but in terms of like discipleship and retention rate, it tends to be better. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there is still a lot of hope. Um, Even like evangelism, we're not as bad as we think we are at evangelism. We're just good at a very particular type of evangelism, and that is evangelizing to lost or lost Christians who are questioning things and who kind of fallen away from the faith, which is kind of fascinating because hear your story and my story and tons of other people who I know. That is a very common thing among Lutheran converts. Is lost Christians who have a lot of questions, and Lutheranism kind of
Yeah.
just welcomes them in. So,
It points you to Christ, you know.
right.
I think the good thing about Utah too is you don't I mean, I don't want to get too snarky about other denominations, but you don't really see an Elka presence out here. Um, we have probably 8 different Lutheran churches in the Salt Lake and Utah Valley, and they're all conservative Lutheran churches, which is
And
really good to see.
what's the Lutheran denomination that you're part of again?
Part of the Evangelical Lutheran Synod,
Okay, so
the
ELS.
ELS.
That's right.
Yeah,
But yeah, I was just
and
kind of
and we
thinking. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and my church body used to be LCMS actually, but um, they became. I think this was around the 80s, I want to say, but they became a little more relaxed on communion, specifically like closed versus open communion, and there was some drama, I guess, between our pastor and the LCMS, and they actually ended up leaving and joining the ELS. So to become more biblically sound, I guess, on communion and take it more seriously, they left the LCMS. So so it's pretty interesting. So my church body was LCMS and now they're ELS.
Which is kind of funny because now both are in communion with each other.
Yeah.
Kind of funny how that kind of comes for full circle.
Yeah.
So
So the ELS is they're in communion with Wells, and we have a good relationship with the Wells pastors, and they've been really really gracious to us. So but yeah, I have nothing against the LCMS, but I guess there were some controversies that I did not know about coming into it. So it was interesting. But
all the lore
yeah,
that
there's a lot of lore that goes. Yeah. So
that
so it is.
talk about Elka, um, which is fascinating. Here in the South, like I have seen one ELCA church, at least in Alabama, and it closed down. But like the
Yeah, they're closing up
LCMS,
shop.
yeah, the LCMS actually has a stronger presence in the South generally overall than the ELCA, and
Yeah.
despite being only about really like 1.2% of the total population, or actually probably less than that, there's a lot of churches, which I find shocking. Just how a small denomination has so many churches across the country. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's a good thing too. I mean, in the Salt Lake Valley alone, in Utah Valley, like I said, there's like 8 different LCMS churches, and they all seem to have memberships. So that's very hopeful, and it makes the presence more alive here. So
yeah.
we've actually got a very historic Lutheran church in Salt Lake called St. John's,
Right.
and I want to say that one was built around the early 1900s.
Is it
You know,
is that ELS or is that Wells? The name
it's
sounds familiar.
it's LCMS.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's a.
Yes.
I remember seeing some videos of this really pretty, gorgeous Welsh church. I believe it might have been in Wisconsin. Now that I think about it, but if Luke here, if I was supreme bishop of all Lutherans in America, I would love to see sort of like a I'll pray for like a united Lutheran church, like national church in America, sort of like how what you see like in Latvia, how they have like
Yeah.
a national church and it's Latvian Lutheran church. But God willing, we'll see more and more unity, which I am
Yeah.
hopeful for. It kind of seems to be a thing historically in America, slowly but surely coming together, sometimes painfully. So
Right. Yeah, definitely. So I hope for that, and there are little differences we got to work out, but I think that it'll happen. So
this
um,
kind of go towards the end of the questions. If you still
yeah,
have time. So like, what are some things that you just love about being Lutheran? Um, yeah.
yeah. I'd say the biggest thing is just having peace and comfort in the fact that Christ has died for me, and his salvation is a free gift, and I think that Lutherans really emphasize that perfectly. Um, I mentioned earlier, the law gospel distinction, um, things of that nature that I really have taken to heart. Um, our confessions are great. Love the Lutheran confessions. Read those, and yeah. I mean, I'm at peace, and I just love where I'm at. So, but yeah, I think just the focus on Christ is the biggest thing for me. So
Amazing.
yeah,
It kind of goes into my last main question would be, how has you probably already kind of touched throughout the entire interview, but how has your life changed now that you are Lutheran?
yeah. Just I think the biggest thing is just peace. Just having that relationship. I feel like I know more now about Christianity than I ever have. I have a really good shepherd, and yeah, I feel less guilty than I ever have, which is a really good thing to feel. It's just been great. I love where I'm at, and uh, hope to continue to grow in it. So
That's great to hear. I guess one last question before we kind of dive into some of the viewer questions. Um, who are some of the church fathers that you read and Lutheran reformers that you read, and just like your favorite books of the Bible that you read on this journey that's kind of like helped you throughout?
yeah, I think the biggest one for me was Paul. Reading Romans, and the verses in there where it talks about how we're saved through faith. I think that was the biggest thing for me. It's right there in front of you. you know, you can just read Paul and be like, okay, I can come to that conclusion just by reading that. So I think that was probably the biggest thing for me, was that affirmed Lutheranism is Paul's writings. I've also read some of Martin Luther and Gerhard and stuff like that too. Still need some work on that. I'm still relatively new, but yeah, hoping to buy some new books soon and get deeper into the theology stuff. But yeah, I'd say I'd start with Paul, and that was kind of where it took hold. So
Definitely highly recommend Martin Chemnitz. Uh,
Chemnitz, yeah,
yeah, he's really good
this
to
is another
read.
one I've heard about. Yeah,
Uh, John Chrysostom's pretty good too. Um, but like a lot of the church fathers are also just pastoral. I feel like nowadays we want to like use them as like punching bags towards each other. But I feel like I read them and they're like these are pastors. Like people just want to use them as like debate me, bro, sort of thing. Admittedly,
Yeah.
I haven't read too much of Luther other than the old and new catechism, not the old and new, the large and small catechisms. Because I'm actually a much younger Lutheran than you are, only for about a year and a half,
Yeah.
maybe 2 years. So I had to get more into that, um, but yeah, definitely. I'm in the same boat. I loved Romans.
Yeah.
Reading through
Roman.
that,
Yeah.
it's probably the most highlighted portion of my Bible.
Yeah. You got Romans 3, one's justified by faith apart from works of law, right? So that no one can boast. Um, and you got Ephesians. There's so much in there that points to that. That idea that Christ, death and resurrection is a free gift to us. It's not of our own accord. It's what He's done for us. And I see that a lot with Paul's writings, and that's actually that's the scripture. I think Romans is the book that gets the most Latter-day Saints out of Mormonism. So,
Wow.
which is kind of interesting. So,
No. So
and then just, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was no no. You go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Oh yeah, and then just like the nature of God, you got Isaiah 43:10 and John 1 verse 1. I mean, it doesn't get more clear than that of like who God is. That He's always been there. He created everything. He's not, he's not a man that rose through exaltation. It's pretty clear that what the Bible says about God.
Awesome. So we have three questions from my followers. I believe that this one you probably have already answered. Did you go straight from LDS to Lutheran, or did you join another denomination first? You've already answered that, and you went straight to
Yeah.
Lutheran. Praise God.
Yep.
And then this one's interesting. I feel like you've kind of already answered it, but what was the most substantial piece of information that you couldn't deny from a Lutheran?
Um, from a Lutheran. Uh, is that? Sorry, read that one more time.
I'm thinking she's asking. So what was the most substantial piece of information that you couldn't deny from a Lutheran? So maybe
Okay.
like a piece of information that you couldn't deny. Um, I guess not like couldn't deny being Lutheran. I guess like
Oh, I see. Yeah, I would say that just how we're justification was probably the biggest thing that I couldn't deny, and the view on the Lord's Supper, I think, were the two biggest issues for me, or biggest things for me. So.
And the last question is from Bluegrass Presbyterian. And
Perfect.
you don't have to answer this. You don't have to answer this one, but I thought it was funny. He said, did you have to wear the special underwear?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I never wore the underwear.
Oh,
So,
okay. Is that true about LDS? Is that they you had to wear like a full suit of like underwear underneath your normal just clothes at all times?
yeah, it's like a form of sort of like spiritual protection almost.
Huh.
And it's seen as sacred. I really don't know a whole lot about it, to be honest. I don't know exactly what the significance is, and I think you learn more of that in the temple, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I never even went to the temple, so I really have no idea. So, but I
Do
know you
they
got to wear
have
them.
do they have like their own version? So like every Christian group sort of has like their ultra just trad kind of groups. Um,
Yes.
I was wondering, like, do Mormons kind of have that? Like, do they have like your normal Mormons, and then you have like some Mormons that are like it's like they're trad Mormons, what they're like hardcore
Yeah.
about it.
So so that gets into another subject, which is so there were, polygamy. First of all, most modern day mainline LDS people, they don't practice polygamy, but you do have some fringe groups like the fundamentalist Latter Day Saints that still practice polygamy and are more, they take all of the older revelations that have been, changed, and they still believe them. So yeah, you do have a lot of those different elements. I actually work with a girl that um, she was part of one in up in Canada. I believe he had 27 wives and over 150 kids.
Oh my gosh, man.
Yeah. So, so yeah, it's it's definitely alive and well, and but yeah, they're definitely in the minority, which is good. So, but yeah, you've got some pretty serious LDS fringe groups that take it way too out of hand.
Well, those are pretty much all the questions I have. Is anything else?
Perfect.
Like, what are you doing now? I know that you said you were working on your church's website. If you want to, I could put that in the description. People can come check out your church or. Um,
Yeah, you could put westjordanlutherans.org. That's the new website that I've put up, and yeah, just I'm actually going to be meeting up with my pastor on Sunday and making some tweaks to it. So,
awesome. Well,
um, but yeah, it's going really good. I help out with communion and stuff like that. So they usually keep me pretty busy. So
well, that's awesome to hear. It's been an absolute pleasure. Maybe in the future we can have part two because I'm sure that there are tons of rabbit holes that we could have gone deeper in.
oh yeah, we just covered the base layer. There's a lot that goes into it, and and I think the biggest thing is just that I'd say to like any audience is just have love for the LDS people, and that's the way you'll really get to them, because the negativity, if anything, it just emboldens their claim, right?
Right.
So yeah, treat them with respect, treat them with kindness, and it's kind of what I say to anybody. So
Well, this has been great. I really do appreciate it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it's been really good. It's good to meet you, and yeah, hopefully, maybe we'll do a second one. So